Great. We are live. Thank you for joining tonight. My name is Dave. I will be your host for tonight's event, which is Game Changers, a journey into sports photography with Jacquie Matechuk. Now, this is pretty cool because we have a live audience in front of me, making me somewhat nervous that you were almost laughing at some of my jokes. So that was okay. And then we have people joining us online, which is very cool as well. So we got lots to talk about. This event is sponsored by Canon. We have Canon in the house. Russ, our local rep, is over there with a lot of lenses. A lot of people would really like to get their hands on, including the 1200 mil, which is, we don't see there any of those. That's a fantastic lens if you get a chance to do that. If you've registered for this event already, there is a very special announcement from Canon. They have a very special offer. If you haven't registered for this event, simply email Evelyn at thecamerastore.com, EVELYN at thecamerastore.com, and Evelyn will send you that promo, which is very cool. Now, going on behind the scenes here, we have Drew and Jeff, who are manning the camera back there. They are looking after all the technical details and make sure everything goes off without a hitch. And I sound half decent. I go something like that. So that's good. It's our live dream team there. Now, part of what I like about the live chat or live streams is the ability to interact with everybody online as everybody in here as well. So after the event here, we will take a few questions from the online audience, and then we'll cut the stream and deal with the questions for the in-person audience here. So if you want to not participate in the chat that's going on live, I'll be monitoring that. Simply email me. It's just dave@thecamerastore.com. Very simple. Easy. Dave. All right. If you are not already familiar with our guest today, Jacquie Matechuk is an award-winning photojournalist and a sports photographer with 7 national accreditations under her belt. She has a passion for chasing decisive moments from dirt grounds in the center of her hometown rodeo arena to the peaks of Aspen at the Winter X Games. As a Master of Photographic Arts with the PPOC and medal winner of a very prestigious award, the Photographic Cup, Jacquie Matechuk continues to share her experience and passion with fellow photographers and as a Canon Ambassador. Jacquie has always found inspiration in the challenge of capturing the unpredictable, whether she's photographing epic scenery, action, wildlife, or extreme sports. The goal remains the same. Put your hands together for Jacquie here. She's joining us. Always happy to see you here. All right, Jacquie, take it away.
I cannot thank you all enough for coming out on what turned out to be a beautiful sunny evening. That's a big give nowadays, so thank you for coming in. Russell from Canon is here as well, so for our folks online as well as those here, great technical advice, a lot of questions we can swing over that way, yay, which is great. And of course, Camera Store and Dave, thank you guys so much for having me back. I got to spend some time with these great folks down in Pincher Creek recently at the Light Chasers Conference. We had a lot of fun down there, and I'm hoping we can bring some of that excitement and motivation here tonight as well. So without further ado, I'm not going to get into a whole bunch about me. There's no time. I've got a lot of things I want to share, and I'm excited to actually learn a little bit more about the people I have here in front of me today. So I am going to throw a little disclaimer out. Shopping cart theory. If you're not familiar with it, basically, I'm going to share the things that have worked for me or the things that have really not worked for me, so I can hopefully streamline your experience. There are going to be some things that you think, wow, that's amazing. I love that idea. Great, take those ones. The ones you think I'm crazy, please keep it to yourself. I don't need any more emails telling me I don't know what I'm doing. We all do things different ways, and we all have capacity to do things different ways. So that's why it's kind of nice to have a chance to listen to different photographers and how they do things. So with that, we're going to get into a journey about sports photography. And I want to do that little litmus test here. So for the people I've got here in the house, how many people here currently make a career or at least earning income right now from sports photography in particular? Just a show of hands. Yeah, no, that's okay. And how many people here are looking to just start getting into sports photography, whether it's for paid or maybe for family or as a hobby? Okay, I love it. This is great. Okay, that helps me a little bit too to kind of gauge what we're going to talk about, and you're coming in at the perfect time. And you also have a leg up on a lot of photographers with a lot of experience, and I'm going to explain a little bit more about that very soon. So when it comes to photography, I like to think of it as having a left brain and a right brain. We have a very technical side, and we have a very creative side, even with sports photography. And I think that's overlooked a lot. And if you want to have pictures that have impact, that stand out, that do something more than just everyone else at the game, that's where you're going to find it, is on that right brain creative side. Left brain? Anyway, so with the core of our creative side, everything's going to stem from the knowledge that we have. And I mean not just knowing that you're going to go to a motocross race or a hockey game, but I am talking about deep, intimate knowledge that spans all of these different topics. All of these topics are really important. The better you are at learning and understanding all these different elements, the more impactful your images are going to be, the quicker you're going to see yourself improve, and the more fun you're going to have behind that lens, honestly. I'm not going to be able to do every single one of these, and nobody wants to sit here that long. So I picked 3 that I want us to talk about tonight. I want to talk about having knowledge of the athlete, the client, the sport, and what that means to the photography. Okay, what happens to us behind the lens as creatives. So as a sports photographer, you got to remember that we have an entire world of unpredictability. There is so few things we get to control. I mean, sometimes you can't decide where you want to stand. You can't decide what height you want to stand at. You don't know what's going to happen in front of you. Lighting might change, backgrounds are changing, people are in chaos, crashes happen. So the one thing you do get to control is your knowledge. That is the one thing you can be as prepared as possible so that you can get those perfect opportunities and you're ready when they happen. And that's what we're going to go into. So when we think about athletes, for the people that we just talked about that raise their hands when they're just starting and you're looking at getting photographs of your kids and your family, this is where you are going to shine, because nobody knows these athletes like you do. So you had raised your hand, correct? No? Who was it that? Okay, I'm going to go to a couple. So who has family that they are hoping to photograph? Okay, what's your name, hon?
Pam.
Pam, okay, Pam. And who is it that you're photographing?
Well, I have a son and a daughter, and our son is a competitive mountain bike racer. He's
Oh.
over in Europe right now. And my daughter's a dancer, so that's why I'm here.
Wow. Okay, and so he's been competing for a while. And have you been there watching him the whole time?
Yeah, when I can, but
Nice. How old is he?
24.
24, in the prime. Okay, thank you, Pam. And you, sir, what's your name?
Roger,
Roger. Okay, Roger. And who are you
my
photographing?
grandson.
Oh,
He plays, he's almost 17. He plays rugby.
wow.
So I go
Exciting.
and take photos of him doing that. And my granddaughter's 8 and she's a dancer.
Oh my goodness. So granddaughter, 8, dancer, and a son, or grandson,
Yeah.
17?
17, almost.
17 playing rugby. Okay. Are they both pretty proud of their sports and
Oh,
what they do?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What I love about just talking to both of you right now, whether you're aware or not, your disposition, first of all, both of you are smiling as you're talking. If you can't see that at home, I guarantee you probably could hear that at home. You have pride, you have connection to these kids. You know what they gave up to get where they're going. You understand the sacrifices involved. It could be broken bones, it could be a lot of heartache, it could be a lot of nights that they got to sacrifice with friends to be in shape. All these different things. Nobody knows what they give out better than family. You are in the best possible positions to catch moments that really matter, both to your athletes and to everyone else, because you're going to see that emotion before anyone else gets it. And we're going to talk a lot about that tonight. So if I go back, I'm going to take a look at how our knowledge really changes us. So if you think of a world-class caliber event like X Games, for example, we see freestyle skier launch himself off this massive lip in the half pipe, way up above the rest of the crowd, thousands and thousands of people lined up along the sides. Pretty obvious this is a good moment, right? Peak action. Not hard, Worth capturing, very obvious. Could be massive freestyle trick. You know, in the black of the night, this guy launches out with this gold medal performance flip, and it's like, wow, nailed it. Okay, pretty easy though, because they're spectacular. It's so obvious that that's a peak moment. Nobody needs to know about that. Same with a player coming out with the tackle of the game. You know, big fumble, they turn back, take a touchdown, and jump ahead. So easy to see these action shots as being blatantly obvious. All you have to do is have the right shutter speed and camera setting. However, there are plenty of other key moments, lots of impact, a powerful punch, that do not have anything to do with peak action. They all come from our intimate knowledge, our ability to anticipate what's going to happen and what it means to the people involved. So photographing for Canada Games. And for those that don't know about Canada Games or Alberta Games, you can volunteer to help them out because they don't have funding. They need assets like this to promote for their athletes. And you can join in, sign up, and go to all these different events. You can get a ton of experience learning from other photographers and build your portfolio. But my client in this case was the Canada Games. So while there are some peak action moments, this ended up being the picture that showed up the most in all of their marketing materials, in their annual reports, because it captured and embodied the spirit of what the Games was about. It was the emotion that they saw. I mean, I'm always into the action, of course, but I learn from things like this. Same thing. You know, quiet moments. This young fella just pausing to reflect before the next 8 seconds of his life are turned upside down, right? Really quiet, intimate moments. No excitement, no peak action, but powerful nonetheless. Stories that might give people a glimpse into the world behind that curtain. You know, they get to see athletes up on a stage and getting medals and doing big jumps, but you know, their logo in the back getting prepped for the big race, that's something that the sponsors are interested in. They get to have a different kind of feature, a different look at what they're about. Or it might be the crowning moment of glory when your athlete just figures out that he is now the best in the world. Right? Very emotional moments. So I want to take a second. This gentleman is named Brett Turcotte. Now, Brett has been a Monster Energy athlete for decades. In 2007, he started competing at the Winter X Games. He has medals upon medals upon medals. But as of 2018, gold has eluded him. He's never been able to put it together. Fortunately for him, in 2018, everything finally went right. The fans saw him and celebrated with him and cheered with him because he's worked so hard to get there. And while these kinds of moments are what we saw from the press and from all the ESPN coverage, I know Brett and I know his wife. And the other part of that, I guess, that intimate knowledge part, they were borderline broke getting him to this last chance to get a gold medal. So when he ended up taking the win with the points, my goal was to see where she was coming from. So I was standing beside Brett, and I saw her coming down from behind the signs. It's like, I need to see what he's about to see. I want to see that connection with them. So when she came around the corner, that was their moment. And it was really sweet. You can see his name, Turcotte. That was Nikki looking at him, just couldn't believe it finally happened. Now, not a big sports moment, and it doesn't maybe mean a lot to a lot of people, but he emailed me as soon as he saw that. He says, I haven't paid for a picture since 2005. Name your price. I made that decision myself. I know that's an invaluable picture to him. It probably isn't to anybody else. But I didn't charge him for that picture. I developed a great relationship with him a lot of respect with that athlete, who also had deep respect from the rest of the athlete field. So having that support, that ended up paying over dozens of times over than had I just asked for a little bit of money. So pick and choose your battles. Okay, so next thing I want to hit, client. All right, our relationships and how we see your client. So over the years, I have photographed for sponsors, teams, athletes, organizers, news media, a little bit of everybody. And the one thing I've learned is everybody has a different idea of what the perfect picture is for them, right? So you really need to understand what it is that your client wants in order to deliver. So Calgary Stampeders, photographing for them, obviously some of those big action shots are a nice thing to have. This picture, they ran through, scored a touchdown after a turnover. Of course, it was a turnover, so I was the only one in the end zone. I was clear across the other side of the field when they spotted me. They pointed, and they all started running. And I looked behind me, and it's like, oh, crap. They're coming right here. So I switched cameras quick. They run up, and they're doing their celebration thing, and they're right down. I'm getting down low and got a bunch of pictures. Stampeders ended up loving this because it was real. It was gritty. Did a little post on it, and all the players reposted it. Loved it because it was an essence of who they were as competitors. So really think outside the box. Other than peak action, there's a lot of things, great moments that have impact. This little picture, so I had an opportunity to be part of Canada's R3 release. They did a global launch, and we had 1 week with a camera, never seen before, no instructional manual. Google has no idea what I'm talking about when I say, how do I work in R3? And I've got to figure out how to show what it can do. No pressure. And I wasn't working for Canon at this point. This was like a tryout, so to speak. So one of the things we ended up doing was motocross, because I know motocross. It's comfortable to me. I know how to make it look like movement and excitement. That ended up being a picture that went in for the final portfolio that ended up leading to an opportunity to be an ambassador for them, right? But again, it's something I'm comfortable with. Same with downhill mountain biking. We went and did some of that for athletics as well. So your knowledge has a big impact. So this picture I brought in because it's far from spectacular for action. However, again, this is a Calgary Stampede shot. I know from working for tourism that they have a lot of need to have negative space in pictures. So they're going to put this in a double-page spread where they can write all the information about the times for the chuck wagon races, right? There's no person looking at us to distract us. Clearly, everybody's glued on what's happening down there. So it's a very generic image. But knowing my client, it hit all the check boxes, right? So really understand what's important to your client, and you'll be able to deliver. Obviously, you get some moments like this at the Stampede. The stock is phenomenal. One thing I would say, if you're going to do action sports like this, use your zoom lenses and give yourself room in the frame. It's always exciting to dial right in and see the beads of sweat and everything else. But if you give yourself room, you can crop it back so that I have nice, clean logos on both sides. If it's a little crooked, I can straighten it out. I can make it look really good. But just give yourself that little bit of lenience so that you can pick and choose. And be ready to think on the spot. So this picture, this is one of the winningest motorsport competitors of all time at X Games. He is a para-athlete, so he's missing a leg from the knee down. Phenomenal racer, he's so fast. Now, when I was trying to get pictures for him, when he's sitting there on the bike with the people around him, it could have been literally anywhere. Like, there was nothing saying what was going on, nothing telling the story. So I see this fella wandering around on the left-hand side. I had a clear line over here, but I ran back to get him in the picture. So something was saying, this is the big leagues, it's the X Games. So watch for those things when you're out there. Sometimes you need a little more to help tell the story. And you can use your foreground as much as your background to make that happen. Movement, anything indicating movement, that's another really exciting, alluring element of sports photography, right? You can't see the guys moving, but that stick, that pine bent, whew, you know that's inevitable, right? So it has a lot of impact. Now, I'm going to show you this because this is what you don't want to provide. And it's just as important as knowing what to provide to your client. So in this case, it looks pretty spectacular. It's gnarly, for sure. But I'm not doing my athlete any justice here, am I? Like, he's not in his finest moment. The guy's got some big problems coming up. And my animal, my stock, I mean, I don't know what is happening with those limbs. I know he was fine in the end, but he looks like he's stressed and bent and maybe something's breaking. So these are not good things. This is not what a rodeo wants to show. So I have to be careful. I can't go post something like this online because it's out of context. Someone's going to look at it and be all up in arms over it. And no horses or cowboys were hurt in the making of that image. This, however, this is good. Little better. We've got lots of explosive action, lots of height, gritted teeth. You can see the fight in that cowboy. Look at the people in the background. They're like, whoa. Even they're blown away. And they do this every single day. We've got nice Halliburton on there. Calgary Stampede logos are on there. It's great. So it's got some value. But again, got to know what they're looking for. Okay, so next element on here, we're going to talk about the sport, knowledge of the sport, and how that's going to impact your images. This is huge. This is so big. You need to understand, I think, what people are trying to achieve. When they win, when they lose, you need to be able to tell a story. You can't do that if you don't understand what you're trying to capture, the same way you couldn't write about it if you didn't understand. So sometimes those moments, again, we talked about it earlier, are going to be really, really obvious. Now, for the athlete and for the venue, this was okay. This is not my favorite for the athlete because I know this particular trick. They want to see their hips down below the bike. That shows a really powerful whip, the lower they are. But this angle, I can't get that. And I'm limited on where I could stand. So I moved to a place where at least I can throw a fireball in there, because that's cool. So now I've upped it up, just a little higher, a little more value. So you got to roll with the punches and do what you can to create. Those really intimate moments, again, where we can feel what's on the line for these guys. Quiet moments like this isn't fast action, not a lot happening. It can take time to move around and make the shot look good. Now I have the capacity to look at all the regular elements of a great photo, like leading lines and the light, getting down low, making sure that whole logo is in there. Because guess what? This showed up all over the place as well, right? Very quiet, very emotional, but all the good elements of a photograph, because there's time. When you can plan your moments, you try and visualize what you can do to express what somebody is trying to achieve, giving people insight into a sport they may not otherwise see. I had a single shot of this, and the multiple exposure really helped get across the fact that he is literally a human bullet, and he did go between the rocks. This is the path flight, or the flight path that they chose. And between the three of them, it was how low can they go? So they had to cross a river and then hike around two different mountain peaks. I had to go up on the other side, cross a different side, and I had to hike up to get the image. There's one shot at getting the image for these guys. And I mean, they're not going to be happy if I tell them they got to go back and do it again. So lots of planning how to make this happen. And the R3 is very fast shutter speed.
Is that handheld?
It is not handheld. No, and this one, again, because I had time, I didn't even have autofocus on. It's strictly manual focus. It's locked in, ready to go. And then as soon as I could hear them, because you'll hear them before you see them ripping through the air, as soon as I could hear them, held her down and caught them going through, right? So you got to kind of plan to. Where did I set it? Yep. Yeah, so I manually focused on the back rock, and I knew at this aperture, so I went, this is a 600, like that's how far away we were from each other, but I actually set it, instead of a 4.0, I set it to a 6.3, because I could, and I had lots of room to the background behind it that it stayed soft. So at 6.3, from that distance, I know I've got that in sharp. Anywhere in there, it's gonna be good and sharp. So yeah, equipment setup, good question. When you understand the action that's about to unfold, you can put yourself in the best position for it. In this case, yeah, it's right down low, because if I can get there before they hit the ground, man, you can see the looks on these kids' faces. It's hilarious. But it has a lot of impact, and they hang on for dear life. And you still have to be able to make changes on the fly. So that's where, you know, preparation on the technical side lets you stay really creative. And you have to recognize that some of the biggest wins you're ever going to capture are not about being the first over the finish line. So Yeti is a team that I was photographing for at X Games. First of all, X Games, you can't go in and photograph for people. ESPN owns the rights to everything. So as a photographer for X Games, when you're hired by ESPN, take your pictures, you go back to the tent, you hand your card, they give you a blank one, you go back out. You never see the pictures you took. That's it. It is their domain. You don't edit them, you don't review them, done. That's it. Fortunately, building some relationships with the athletes and with the manufacturers, it took some fighting, 2 years, but they got me in. They got me in to represent the teams. So not the news outlets. I couldn't send them to the news outlets. I could only provide the images to the teams. So this young fella fought so hard to try and make it to the final round. Anything that could have happened in all of his qualifiers happened. Things broke on the bike over and over again. He crashed, he struggled. His team was doing everything they could for him. He came over the finish line in 3rd place, which means he medaled. And his team lost their minds. It was one of the biggest celebrations of the day. Here's the kicker. 1st place was also on Yeti, and it was my son. So I'm standing at the finish line photographing him. My family, our team, blows up, hugging, jumping, celebrating. I'm like, not now. I couldn't do it. I still had a job to do. I photographed them. I see our pit crew running into Cody, the big hugs. They rolling around in the snow, taking pictures, and I'm watching. I'm waiting, and I see Yannick come. And it's like, I gotta leave. This is my other job. So I gotta be there for this. Nobody caught this. Everybody was down at gold medal celebration. But this meant just as much to that manufacturer, almost, as the gold medal. And I still have my time to go celebrate after. But when it's game on, it's game on. They trust you. That's huge. You got to make sure you're there for them. You're the only one that can make those moments live on. And your head is always on a swivel. Sometimes you know what's going to happen. This was not supposed to happen. At least they told me it wasn't happening. And I was not set up for lights off and explosion. However, a couple quick adjustments, because I know the camera, was able to still grab a few pictures of this before it was back into chaos in the middle of the arena. So getting to the point where your camera adjustments are almost instinctive, you're going to be very happy once you get there. It's a lot more fun. Okay, so regardless of the photographs or the sport that you're photographing, I really want this to hit home for you guys. You cannot, under any circumstances, you can't capture a great moment if you don't know or don't understand what makes it great. If you remember nothing else from our time today, you have to understand what you're photographing, okay? All right, we're gonna shift. We're gonna go full left brain. So let's talk technical now, because it is the other side of this, and the more we get this pinned down, and this is actually the easier part to pin down once you have the answers, then you've got the capacity to be creative, to look for the other moments, to get invested in what you're seeing and really feel what the athletes are feeling. So, technical sports photography, same thing. This is all going to be based around intimate knowledge, but completely different components. So we're going to, again, touch on a couple of these. Camera functions, ethics, and we'll do some contractual obligations, just some preliminary stuff. It probably sounds dry, but we'll make it fun, I promise. Okay, so first thing we're going to worry about is going to be our camera functions. This is very important. Obviously, we know images like this require a great deal of knowledge or preparation, but it's also understanding the changing conditions, because you're going to deal with everything from weather, light, speed of action, things not happening the way they're supposed to, your lines of sight, just on and on and on and on. Got to be able to switch. So getting comfortable. And we're going to talk about setting the camera up, because it really pushed people to think, whatever it is you're photographing, if you start to think about that camera as your partner out there, it's you and your ride or die partner. If you get that partner set up to do everything possible to help you succeed, you'd be amazed at what the two of you can accomplish. These cameras can do a lot, but we have to empower them to take things off our shoulders so we can do the things that only we can do behind the lens. Action's action, right? It just doesn't care. It doesn't wait for you to figure out what to do or how to adjust things. If you're not ready, no problem. Remember that gentleman I had with the X Games fella in front of him? This is him in the para-athlete event for snow biking. The guy behind him can't walk. And they're out here racing. It's a new lease on life. How is that for motivating? They won't stay down. It's fantastic. And when you get things right, you get the moments like that, because you're not just looking at the action, you're looking at the connection, which is a big part of the whole picture. So let's go into this technical stuff. So some of my key settings I want to share, because these are really, I get a lot of questions about these. And again, this is going to be the shopping cart theory thing. This is what I use. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to use the same thing, but here are just some of the shutter speeds. Sort of my general, and please feel free to take a picture if you want. My general rule of thumb when it comes to speed, trying to catch the action, doesn't always work, and these are minimums. If it's a really bright day and you're capturing rodeo, lots of light, and I can do 1/8,000th of a second, I'll do 1/8,000th of a second. As long as my ISO's not too high, it's not a really, really noisy image, why wouldn't I? Because if I'm a little shaky, or if I get bumped, or I'm trying to pan, it's going to be reacting to whatever I need it to do that much quicker. So don't be shy. Don't be scared to crank up your shutter speed, as long as you've got enough light to do it. So we're going to talk a bit about that light thing, because when you're photographing something like a lot of the track sports I do, I'm in the middle of the track, and the sports are happening all around me. So I'm looking over here. If the sun's behind me, it's bright sun, then they go into the shadows. They turn around. Now it's half sun, half shadows. Now they're backlit. Now we come back around. The light's behind them, on and on and on we go. So the light is all over the place. If I'm worried about adjusting my ISO, I have no capacity to do anything else, let alone watch the action and see who's taking who and who's lining somebody up for a pass. Like, I've got a lot of things to pay attention to. So enter my partner. I kick it on to auto. I let it figure it out. However, there is a caveat. The metering, so cameras meter, which means they look at the light that's available and they make a decision on how much light to let in. And those are your ISO numbers, right? So if you have ISO 100, there's not as much light. Sorry, there's more light. As you go higher, it's trying to add light in, and it gets noisier. Okay, it's adding more light into the frame for you. So rather than me worrying about it, I let the camera do that. I put it on evaluative metering. So that takes the whole scene, it takes the brightest brights, the darkest darks, averages it out. And that's the parameter it uses. Then I use exposure compensation, that little thing. And I take that whole spectrum and I move it a little bit darker, just a little bit darker. Because almost every single post-processing program out there, including your iPhones, Canon has an amazing app that you can download your pictures right to it from the camera. It's easy to bring shadows up and to add light, but if you have things blown out in your image, they're blown out. You're not going to recover any detail. So I always have it a little bit darker. I take that whole spectrum and put it down. And if you've ever heard people say, stop your camera down, or stop it down, or use 2 stops down, or 2 stops of light, this is what they're talking about. Each little click, I'm not a super technical person, so each little dot on there, that's a stop. So 2 stops would be 2 moves down. So you're going to control the parameter, but you're going to let the camera do the heavy lifting and figure out the ISO for you. Now, in this case, well, we'll come back, hang on. So, yeah, so with our cameras, this is the back of my R3. On the top right side, there's that little star, and I have it on the R5 as well. This is a custom menu option. And a lot of people don't use this. I use this a lot. I have 3 custom menus on my camera. One is nighttime, one is sports, and one is wildlife. And on those menus, everything I'm going to need to adjust, so I might have to adjust the type of image, depending on who I'm photographing for. Maybe not just RAW, I might need RAW and JPEGs because I don't get to edit it. I've got to send it off between the 2nd and 3rd period because they're going to get posted, so I need to have a JPEG. My cropping, if I need to zoom in or out, it's all right here. My subject tracking, if I want it on or off. Am I going to detect vehicles or people or animals? I can switch all those things in this one menu. These are the things I want for sports. My wildlife is different. I have the sound one, where you can have electronic shutter or manual shutter. Electronic is silent. You don't hear anything. So if I need to have manual shutter on, I can. If I'm trying to coach somebody, I'll have manual on so they can hear and see how I'm photographing. But if I'm out there with an animal, I might want it quiet so I'm not disturbing them, right? So you can adjust these to whatever you need. But once you have them here, all the controls right at your fingertips. Now this is one of my favorite. Okay, most important thing about what we do when we photograph sports, speed is king, right? We can't have a blurry picture. You can have a noisy picture that catches action, but if it's blurry, nobody likes it. On our RF 100-500, that little ring is programmable. You can program that ring to do whatever you want. I program my ring to be shutter speed. So I have a barrel racer, for instance. This is a great example. She comes around, she comes around the barrel, and as she's coming out for that final run, she's a little bit slower as she first comes off the barrel. So I want to get a panning shot where you get the nice blurry legs of the horse, but she's nice and sharp. So I have it cranked right down to like 1/25 of a second. So really, really slow. Pan, pan, pan. One zip with my finger, and I'm at 1/2000th of a second, bang, 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 across the line. That quick. That's all it takes. If you're sitting there and photographing birds, birds like to poop before they take off. It's wonderful that they tell us what they're doing. So if they're sitting on a fence post, it's tough light, and you've got nice low shutter speed, so you've got more light in the picture, and you see the poop. It's like, oh, make it faster, and there they go. That's it. No doing this and scrolling around this, just one little finger. It's great. Nobody uses it. I don't get it. Okay, and again, so we talked about having the auto for your light, and I know there's a lot of sports photographers out there that don't believe in automatic settings. That's fine. That works for them. It doesn't work for me. If you're just starting, you can also set your shutter priority. Okay, and what shutter priority means is you're going to control how fast, that very top left where it says 1/6400th of a second, that's a really, really fast shutter speed. You're going to have control over that. It's going to do everything else. It's going to figure out the aperture and the ISO for you. You just have to think about one thing, and that's how fast does my camera have to be to catch what's happening. So if you're just getting started, this is a great place. Let the camera do some heavy lifting for you. So TV mode, which is, Canon uses TV, it's just short for time value, but it's shutter priority. It's the shutter speed. So use those on your camera, set your ISO to auto, let your partner do some heavy lifting for you. And like the best of any relationship, you know, you have to have each other's back between you and that camera. So know your limitations and understand limitations of your partner. Just because you've got all the settings in the world, sometimes you're in a situation where you're just asking too much. It just can't take a picture in the shadows at 9 o'clock at night at 1/6400th of a second and make any discernible shape. It's just too much. So you have to understand that and have some love for that camera so it can care back. But there's also places where you can set your limitations. So for Canon, again, top left corner, you see the little red camera. Submenu 2, we have ISO speed settings. So if you're going to start using your auto ISO, you may want to control how much auto. If you accidentally crank your shutter speed up and it's shooting it at 102,000 ISO, which it can do, it's something, but it's probably not ideal. I usually keep mine between that 100 and 12.8, and then I just have to make the rest of the decisions along the way. How much shutter speed? Can I get it to where I want to go, or do I have to look for a different image, different shot? Maybe it's not an option. How are we for time? Everyone's going, no, not all the time. Okay, so some additional settings, and I wanted to put these up in writing. So again, you can take pictures of these and get comfortable with them on your cameras. So AI servo mode. AI servo is the ability to track and analyze movement. Okay, so when you've got anything moving, any type of a sports type of image normally, AI servo is great. If you're in a studio taking portraits, one shot is probably the ticket. So you won't use one shot. Adjust the drive mode. So drive mode would be something like you're shooting single shot, or you're shooting high or high plus, depending on the camera, what they call it. So again, it depends on the speed of the action. Sometimes I do have to use high plus, which is a crazy number of frames per second, but I want one exact fraction of a second. That's the perfect image. Other times it may not matter. So you can do low and slow if you want for your shutter drive. Always shoot in RAW. You can shoot in RAW and JPEG if you want. If you don't have software, if you're just getting started and you don't have editing software, then you can photograph in JPEG. You can send it to your phone if you want and make some simple adjustments if you need to. The reason you would do raw image has more data, so in post-processing, it really lets you make a lot of fine-tuning adjustments. Lots of depth of shadow and highlights and color. They look flat though. When you look at the pictures, if you were to shoot in both RAW and JPEG, you looked at the JPEG version and the RAW version of those pictures, night and day difference. The JPEGs look good. RAW is not so impressive till they run through post-processing, okay? So everyone will tell you if you're shooting sports, you need to shoot RAW. If you're not putting them through an editing program, do not shoot RAW. Shoot them in JPEG. Stabilization, again, you know yourselves better than anyone. If you're a little shaky, if you get really nervous because this is like the big event, get that stabilization working and use as much shutter speed as you can to help offset it. Stabilization is amazing now. Spot focus, the tracking on these cameras, are you kidding me? Sticky. Like once it gets a hold of an eye or a face, oh, it's amazing. Let it do the heavy work. Back button. Have to bring this up. I shot sports for years without back button. silly girl. It's so much harder. Once you figure out how to do back button focus, you double the control you have over a scene. Let me explain. So with my back button focusing, one is set up so that it does my tracking. So I'm gonna say, here camera, find the face I want. And if it's trying to find it and it can't find it and it's struggling because the light's not good, I'm waiting and waiting and waiting for it to get to the point that I want it to. But I don't have to wait if I have back button. I switch literally from here to here, and now I have spot focus. So I take control back because I've asked too much from my partner. He can't live up to my request. So I am going to take over, spot focus on the exact place I want that focus to be, and now I've got the picture that I want. I can't do that if I'm just using the front because it does 1 meter, 1 focus, that's it. So it will seem like a big change, but it does not take long to get used to it, especially if you're just starting out. There's lots of great videos about setting up back button, but the control you'll have, oh, night and day difference. Okay, so ethics, oh my goodness. This is really, really important. As photographers, when we are working with athletes and teams, you are given a great deal of trust. Right? You're representing them, what they're doing, the events that happen. Sometimes these are the absolute most exhilarating moments of their lives, and sometimes literally the most devastating moments of their lives. That is a lot of responsibility, and you're going to have choices that will come up, things that you have to decide how you want to handle them. You're going to get one shot with your clients, with your athletes, and it's a small world when it comes to photography, especially in the sports arena. So if you abuse that trust, you're going to have a hard time making your way back in. Got a story. Understand where your loyalties lie. So we had a cowboy at an event a couple years ago. We have this event called the Wild Cow Races. It is ridiculous. The world's biggest cows penned up, just dying to run over some poor cowboy. 3 cowboys hanging onto the end of a rope attached to the cow inside of the stall, and 5 stalls filled with cows, 15 cowboys. The horn goes, all the doors open, all the cows run into each other, all the cowboys are stepped on and drugged all over the arena. It's chaos. It's funny if you don't know who you're photographing. It's definitely scary if you're watching it from an aspect of someone you know. One of the teams, whatever happened, the 2 big guys, the little fellow was supposed to be the one at the back that would eventually run and jump on the cow. Because the point of this is that you get a header that covers the cow's eyes up, the other guy's holding the rope, 3rd guy jumps on, has to ride it for 2 or 3 bucks, and then you won. This team, the 2 big guys, gave up right away. They left the 3rd guy, the little fella, at the back, hanging onto the rope. My God, he was tenacious. Did not let go. He got drug and drug and drug. People were laughing, he's laughing. But then something happened, and his pants caught. And they came all the way down to his knees. At which point he let go of the rope. However, he's laying down, butt in the air, pants at his knees, and he starts slinking to try and pull the pants up as he sits upright, and he's laughing. And the organizers at the rodeo came over immediately, and they're, tell me you got pictures of that. That was awesome. I said, I had the whole thing. I happened to be watching as that unfolded. There's some crazy pictures. He's like, great, we need those uploaded like right now. Those are gonna be amazing. I'm like, okay, I just need to talk to him first before, because I said, like, look at these, like, they're very personal pictures. And they said, no, it doesn't matter. He's an athlete. He signed a waiver. There are pictures. Now, I know this is a person that's paying me, but I'm not okay with that. And I said, I need an opportunity to talk to him. If he's okay with it, great, no problem. And it took me about 20 minutes to get to the back to where he was. And I showed him the pictures and explained, they wanted to post. And he was a great sport. And he said, yes, that's okay. And then I felt fine. And we did a post, and I still blurred out his butt. But the point is, I was able to look back and know I did something I felt comfortable with. It would have been, it's not my decision to put somebody in that position, and I don't think it should be anybody else's. Now, it may have been a little frustrating for the person that hired me because I didn't do it on the spot, but no regrets. No regrets of doing that at all. Yeah, one reputation in this line of work, so don't wreck it. And give back what you get. If you're out there and you've got somebody helping you, remember what that felt like. The first time you showed up to photograph an event and you didn't know how to turn your camera on, didn't know how to take a battery out. I remember that. Oh my God. Do you know how embarrassing that is? It's like the battery's dead. Where the hell's a battery? I literally did not know how to get a battery out of my camera. Everybody goes through that at some point. I could test. Everybody goes through it. So be empathetic. Remember what it was like when you first got started, when you see someone else coming up trying to learn what you're learning. Okay, so last but not least, if you're going to do contracts, if you're going to sell images, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this, but I do want to have it up. A couple of points, treat every contract like it's worth millions. So if you're doing a little contract for somebody, this is the perfect time to sort through all the processes. How are you going to do the estimates? What are your waivers like? What's the billing like? What's your agreement? How do you define your terms? How do you define the usage of the images? Use the little contracts to work through all that stuff so that you're in a good position when the knock comes to do something bigger, because it could very easily happen if you start catching the right images. I did not get into photography with the intention of getting into photography. I was working on a race team, and I just had a different perspective than the other photographers who were there for a high-speed moment on the track. I knew the people involved. I knew what was on the line. I knew how much it meant. And I caught very different images than they did. And before I knew it, I was taking pictures on a regular basis. Present like a professional. Assume every time you're out there, you're applying for another job. I cannot tell you how many times I've worked somewhere and that's where the next job came from, because they saw how you handled yourself. They felt everybody really, you did a good job representing who you were hired by. The product was good. It's not easy to find. So if you're doing it well, you're going to get people asking you to do more. Cover yourself. Insure. One of the things people don't think about, that is actually a really good way to up your value. I'm going to go a little off topic, but people always go to price when it comes to photography, right? That becomes a big thing. Well, so-and-so will do it for this much. So-and-so will do it for this much. The rules of sale are that when you have enough value in a product, and value will be determined by the price that you're offering. So when those two things align, you have a sale. If your price is here and somebody says, ooh, that's too expensive, it's because they see the value of what you're offering down here, which means you've got a choice. You can drop your price, that's not fun, or you can raise the value. This is one of the elements you can raise value and show that, hey, when I'm out there and photographing, I'm fully insured. My equipment, my liability, so if somebody gets hurt doing something for me, you don't get sued. It just increases the legitimacy of the business that you're running, of the service that you're offering. Never undervalue what you're doing. It's really easy, especially when you want to get in the door with somebody. So pick and choose. If you're going to do free images for someone because you want experience, that's fine. But you've got to think about a couple things. So if you're going to go to an event and you're going to photograph something like Stampeders, and you've got some guy showing up, and he's taken hundreds of pictures, and he's giving them away, free of charge, just giving them away. How do you think every other photographer making a career on that field feels about that guy that just wants in so desperately he'll give everything away? It's a small world, and you do need friends out there. So don't give it away. If you're going to give it away, go to the Rotary, go to the Lions Club, go to a women's shelter, go to a kids center. Those are the people that have no budget. Go get your feet wet there. Do complimentary photos for them, for their events, for their sports. Not to mention, looks pretty good on a resume, huh? Right? These are the people that you've been working for and doing work for. So double-edged sword there. And make sure all the contact details are worked out in advance. There are a ton of things, so look them up. If you are selling and getting into contracts, I know that's not a lot of the group here, but don't be shy about doing your research when it comes to that, because expectations come hard and fast. So I know I turned the world upside down a little bit for everybody today. Hopefully that was in a good way, though. And we've covered some items that you can use right away to help you get into some sports photography and capturing those beautiful moments with your family and friends. If you have any questions, we're going to open it up, because I'd love to be able to help you guys out if there's any way I can do that tonight.
All right, Jackie, that was fantastic. Lots of stuff going on here, yeah. So it's all about shutter speed, eh?
It's a big part.
Okay, we have a couple questions here from an online audience. Scott Ireland says, do you tend to favor electronic shutter for the burst rate or mechanical to avoid rolling shutter distortion?
So I guess the first thing I have to do is address, he obviously has an R5. That was, R3s do not have a shutter roll at all. So I can do either or. I am in the habit of doing electronic now because I've gotten so used to it, especially on the wildlife side. It's a lot more courteous. When you're competing with other sports photographers, man, I can remember the first digital I had with electronic shutter. It was fantastic, because what would happen in the old days, you'd all be huddled together taking sports images, and you'd kind of get chatting, or you'd look over here, and all of a sudden, two cameras start going tick, 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 tick. It's like, oh, where? Oh, there it is, and everybody would get the shots. Well, now nobody's got any clue. If they're not paying attention, they have no idea that you just fired 250 shots of something epic because they weren't paying attention. So it's a little fun that way, but it is a quicker. I think I'm used to it now. I will warn you, if you've never used electronic shutter speed, the first 1,500 pictures you take will be of your feet in grass, because you don't think it's taking pictures, and it's hammering them out. So it does take some getting used to, but that's a rite of passage. So don't be shy, it's digital, just delete, and never delete on the fly. Sorry, that was one thing I wanted to say. I am a pixel peeper, so as I'm photographing, I do want to see. I want to make sure that I'm right. And I know some people are like, you still do that? Yeah, because they're paying me good money to give them good photos. So yes, I do. I want to make sure if I have to make an adjustment, I'm there making the adjustment and not losing any more opportunities. But if you see things you don't like, do not delete them. Never delete them off your camera. You will corrupt your cards by doing that, and you'll lose all the images. And it could be a long time. I've only had it happen twice, but both times it was because I was deleting images. Okay.
Yeah, the cameras have gotten a lot better that way.
Oh, yes, they have.
And we used to have a lot more corrupted cards in the past when people would delete things like crazy. But nowadays, we don't see it nearly as much, but it is a very good practice to do. And basically, cameras write from A to B. And if you scatter that all over the place, right, there's potential for corruption more.
Yeah.
Modern day cameras are better at it, but still, it's a very good practice to get through. And format your memory cards in the camera before you go anywhere.
Always.
That digital handshake, make sure everything's compatible and everybody's working together with that there. I got another email question regarding the human bullet photo, which is probably one of the more technical shots that you got there, right? Can you explain more about the process with that? You shot it with the R3?
Yes, so R3 RF 600 f4 was the lens.
Did you use the 195 frames per second burst rate? Did you use 30 frames per second? What did you do, Jackie?
I used high plus, so I wanted to have choices in how that was going to work, and in theory. Lots of planning with the athletes. Everything from timing, we had walkie-talkies to each other so that we knew what we were trying to do. What they did in those series of pictures, because there were two different athletes, 3 guys up there, but 2 that ran that route, was incredibly risky. This is what they do. They are professional athletes. But again, very, very difficult sometimes to watch somebody, going headfirst between massive rocks at 120 miles an hour. Sidebar, especially when it's your kid. Yeah. So the other one is not my child, so that one was a little easier to photograph. This one was tough, but the sponsors, the suit company, loved it. They'd never seen a wingsuit shot done like that. They've seen them from up above, they've seen them coming at or one-off shots, GoPro shots, but they'd never seen that before, and they loved it. So different types of photography backgrounds and experiences, bring everything you've got into this. You never know what you'll come up with.
So when you're planning out that shot, were you're obviously looking for the sort of the keeper shot, that 600 mil shot was your main goal. Did you bring along a second or a third camera as well to capture a different angle of view? Any remote cameras, anything like that?
Yeah, I had a couple different 7200 and I had a 1635. I had an R5 with me as well, so I was also doing a lot of behind the scenes, the B-roll stuff. So I had video and photos of them just trying to row across the river. Is the funniest thing. I don't know what they were doing. And I mean, you've got them going through and deer crossing the river and, folding everything up and hiking off into the mountain. Like, a lot of really neat pictures that tell the whole story. But that is definitely one of the more dynamic ones. And again, understanding the limitations of a camera. I have stood on the side of the mountain and have them go right over my head. I can't even move fast enough, let alone expect the camera to lock on and adjust fast enough to take that picture. So I know I've got to get to a place where I can see them coming as laterally as possible so that field of, that focal field stays the same and I can keep all of that flight path in focus. Had I done it head on, I don't think it would have worked.
All right, so we got one more question from the online audience, and then we'll cut the live stream here in a minute here. Kay, simply Kay, says, did you have a mentor, a person that helped you teach along the way? If so, how did you find someone that was willing to help you learn and teach you in different things and put up with your difficult personality?
Gosh, so this is a friend. Clearly, this is a friend. What do you know? I did. So the very, very beginning when I first started, I had a photographer at the Superbike track. I was working for a Superbike team, doing logistics and fuel calculations and timing. Team got big, I had more time on my hands, and I saw what the photographers were doing and thought, man, that's pretty cool. So sort of slid over into that arena, asked them for some help, and they were one of them in particular, Rob, very kind, generous person, gave me lots of great advice, like, it doesn't matter what camera body you buy, but buy the very best glass you can afford. Whatever you do, just that's where you put your money. I think my very first lens was a 70-200, as it turned out. These guys were sitting way back up on the hills trying to get pictures of these guys coming through corners at 300 kilometers an hour. I'm on the team. I'm right down there where these guys are coming through. I didn't need a long lens. It was great for me. But like I say, the real stories I found were happening on pit lane and back in pits, and the relationships between the rider and his mechanic, and the screaming or the panic when things were going wrong. Like, there was a lot more of the story to be told. So, yeah.
Well, and the thing too is, you're fortunate enough you have the R3 to work with and the R5. So some Canon's top end cameras and lenses. What a lot of people don't realize is that Canon's got a huge lineup of cameras that are incredibly capable. One of my favorite cameras on the market right now is the R6 Mark II. It is basically a baby R3 without the eye control focus and the giant battery. But
I love my R3. I don't know what you're talking about.
But there's so much out there, and you can capture some amazing images like that. So we're going to cut the live stream here in a second. Here, I want to thank everybody for turning up online and watching this amazing presentation, Jackie. We appreciate that. We want to thank Canon for sponsoring tonight's event. Which is very good. And Canon will be sending an offer out for you. Simply, if you haven't emailed already, check out Evelyn at thecamerastore.com. She will send you that. We have a lot more TCSTV live events coming up. So make sure you tune in to our YouTube channel. Evan and I are always out gallivanting and trying out new camera gear, and everything's always a lot of fun. So thank the live audience for joining in, and we will catch you guys again soon.